Before we get going.
I think we're waiting on Gator. Come on. Okay, I think we have everybody now. Are y'all ready? Everybody set up, ready to go? Actually start a little early. How about that? Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. My name is R.J. Larissa. I'm the state attorney for the 7th Judicial Circuit. I also want to thank, we've got all 4 sheriffs from each county within the 7th Circuit, Putnam, Flagler, Volusia, St. Johns County, that are joining me here today. We have the chief of FDLE for the Jacksonville region, Mike Williams, the former sheriff of Duval County, and we have Shannon with ATF, who's also going to be here today to share some information with you. And the reason I asked y'all to come here today is because we started an initiative back in May of this year, and we call it Operation Young Guns. If you haven't noticed, there has been quite an increase, a troubling and dramatic increase in gun violence, especially with young kids. We decided that it was a threat that had to be addressed head on in the 7th Circuit. So we got together, and I want to applaud the sheriffs and all the law enforcement agencies in the 7th Circuit, because we met on May 22nd of this year in Flagler County, got all four county sheriff's offices involved so we could discuss ways to address what we call this young gun violence. And we decided to put some parameters on that. When we look at what we call the young gun type of case, you're looking at a juvenile up to the age typically of around 25 years old. We've had kids as young as 12 years old who have been involved in gun violence or gun thefts, and all the way up to 25, 28 years old. So we're looking at that age range. We're also looking at certain charges. It could be a theft of guns. For example, a lot of you may have heard or noticed about car brakes. We have had a dramatic increase in kids going around the different neighborhoods throughout the 7th Circuit and beyond. This, by the way, folks, this is not just a 7th Circuit problem or not just a state of Florida problem. This is a national problem, a national epidemic of gun violence with young people stealing guns, using guns, and committing terrible crimes, violent crimes. So we've had car breaks where the whole purpose is to get guns, maybe money, but primarily the target is guns. Just as recently as this weekend, Friday night in St. Johns County, there's a subdivision located close to the interstate and US 1 where some kids were dropped off, totally dressed and covered so that the surveillance cameras wouldn't be able to identify them, and they were checking car doors. Well, luckily, there was a resident that was still open. Their Ring video alerted them. They called the sheriff's office, and St. Johns County Sheriff's Office was there and was able to make 2 arrests of young individuals who were out with no other purpose than to break into cars and try to find firearms. It's extremely troubling because here's what happens. The guns migrate They don't just stay in St. Johns County or Volusia County or Putnam or Flagler. In fact, we had a burglary of a business in St. Johns County where 16 guns were stolen. One of those guns was used in an attempted murder and a drive-by shooting of a home. 2 other guns wound up in Duval County where they were seized during an armed robbery investigation. We've seen guns migrate within the state of Florida and beyond after they've been stolen. These guns are traded and they're sold and they're used over and over and over again. So we have hot spots as well that we've noticed within the circuit. Look at Flagler County, Bunnell. Most of y'all may remember you covered the story where we had the sign put out on US 1 because we had a 16-year-old murdered, and we were trying to solve that case. Then we had another 16-year-old murdered by kids who were not much older, if maybe even younger. We wound up getting indictments on 6 individuals for various crimes, and once we were able to get those folks in jail, it calmed down, and we'll knock on wood. We certainly hope and pray that it will stay that way. But Bunnell's had a rash of gun violence, young gun violence. Putnam County, Palatka, there were 28 shootings in Palatka, I believe, within less than a 2-month period. We recently got indictments and charges in Putnam County for homicides and attempted homicides, and have seized quite a few guns. The sheriffs will tell you a little bit more of the specifics of that. In Volusia County, the DeLand or the Spring Hill area, Daytona Beach, we have serious gun violence going on there. We had retaliatory shootings going on in the DeLand area, and I know that Sheriff Chitwood and his crew stepped in to assist the DeLand Police Department, made some arrests, and I know that Mike's got he can share with you some statistics about some guns that they've recently taken off the street. And in St. Johns County, as I mentioned, we've had some car breaks, and we've also had some homicides and attempted homicides that fit the criteria for our Young Guns Initiative. We are identifying these folks, and we're aggressively prosecuting these folks because, quite frankly, when you have somebody sad that they're young like they are, but when they put a gun in their hand and they use it, it's over. I mean, it is over. It's time for them to pay the price for what they are doing. That violence cannot be tolerated anywhere in this circuit or anywhere for that matter. What are some of the charges? First-degree murder, firearm, attempted second-degree murder, kidnapping, burglary while armed, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, carjackings, home invasions. You name it. Any kind of violent crime that people use a firearm for, we've got them. In fact, if you look at the board there, we have over 200 cases. I think last count's 208 since May of this year. That's just when we started tracking it. 190 defendants, 570 charges, and I just mentioned some of them. And you can look by county, defendants by county, and you can see the numbers and the charges. These are real numbers, folks, and these are fresh numbers. These are not numbers that have been over this is less than a year. And it continues to grow. What happened in Duval County over the weekend? We had a shooting of a vehicle. I think a coach was taking some kids from a practice from the Legends Center. And there was a drive-by shooting. A 13-year-old boy is dead, I believe. An 11-year-old child was shot. The coach is in critical condition. And folks are wondering what in the world is going on. It's continuing to happen, and we have to do something about it. And the goal of our operation is not just cooperation, because we have great cooperation within the Seventh Circuit, but to also attack this problem, get these folks off the street that are committing these violent crimes, get lengthy prison sentences on these individuals so they cannot terrorize these communities anymore. And I think the sheriffs and the other law enforcement folks here will share with you, these folks don't just commit crimes, they terrorize their communities, they threaten people. They threaten folks not to come forward to help us solve murders and robberies and home invasions, making our job much more difficult. These folks have to go. So we have to be aggressive in our prosecution of these folks, but at the same time, we want to also try and help as much as we can on the front end. You know, the criminal justice system is where a lot of social problems manifest themselves. We didn't create these kids picking up guns and shooting and killing people. That we didn't create that issue, but we have to deal with it. But it's not the sheriff's job, it's not my job our job is to protect you and your families and your neighborhoods. That is our number one priority. We want to try and help stop kids from committing these crimes. We want to attack the front end. But we can't that's not what we're geared for. We will do our best to help, but we need meaningful, productive, and candid response from the community. When I say candid, folks, it's time to quit calling people names, and it's time to stop blaming folks, and it's time to take a hard look at the facts. That most of this violent crime is concentrated in lower income minority communities. And we have to find a way to reach out and do something about that. If we don't, this cycle will continue over and over again. Before I turn it over to the sheriffs, I'd also like to mention a couple cases we prosecuted recently in the 7th Circuit. In Volusia County, we got a conviction on a 19-year-old named Edgardo Hernandez, armed robbery with a firearm. The gun was stolen from Seminole County. He's pending sentencing with a maximum exposure with an armed robbery of life in prison. Flagler County, Randy Alexander, convicted of attempted manslaughter with a firearm and shooting into a building. He was 21 years old at the time. 34 casings were found after the shooting into the residence. He had 2 or 3 co-defendants, and sadly, after this shooting, one of his co-defendants was shot and killed in another young gun violence episode before he could be prosecuted. The other individual already entered a plea and is serving a lengthy prison term. Then in Putnam County, we had Timothy Scott. He was convicted of attempted murder. He was 15 years old at the time. Shot 2 individuals with a stolen gun, 2, and they were teenagers. Both survived. They were 17 and 18 years old. He has been convicted and awaiting sentencing in Putnam County. I've also mentioned to you in St. John's about the car brakes and the guns that have been migrating there. Folks, this is not a new story. This has been happening. But it's time that the community's aware of it and that we get help from other agencies and other institutions to help us address this. I want to applaud our federal, state, and local agencies and our partnerships, the sheriffs, FDLE, ATF. We're using NIBIN to help us have leads and break some of these cases, and ATF is going to share that information with you. You saw us shoot today and collect some of those casings. So our long-term goal here, folks, is to leverage the NIBIN system along with all these real-time crime intelligence tools that we have throughout the circuit, whether it be our license plate readers or whether it be the video surveillances that are available and all the other tools that law enforcement has to do something significant about this problem. I would like to now take the time to introduce Sheriff Rick Staley to make a few remarks.
Thank you, RJ. First, I want to tell you that we really appreciate in this circuit the cooperation. All the sheriffs work together. Our federal partners, ATF, we've done a number of operations with them because guns and youth violence know no boundaries. You've already heard our state attorney mention guns stolen in Seminole County and up in a homicide or up in Jacksonville and so forth. But I think the important thing to take away is lock your guns up. And if you have young kids at home, secure your guns where they can't get them. Someone under the age can't legally buy a gun. So they're getting these guns in the black market, burglarizing cars, and stealing them. Just over the weekend, we arrested a young man, 13 years old, for making a threat to shoot up a school in Flagler County because he was angry over a dance party that he didn't go to. And he had access to a gun, a parent gun, and he admitted that he had access to that gun. So parents need to talk to their kids about anger management and the appropriate way to respond when you get mad or angry, and that's not occurring. And that's what we deal with as sheriffs and our state attorney. So if we work together, we can make every community safer. And to the youthful offenders out there, if you make the state attorney's list young guns operation, that's not going to be good for you. Fair warning. You're liable to be charged as an adult, and you're certainly going to be a focus of strict prosecution. Just like I have my sheriff's high interest target list for drug dealers, you don't want to make this list. So change your act, parents, talk to your kids, and let's solve this problem together for our communities. Thank you.
And if I could invite Sheriff Deloach from Putnam County.
Good afternoon. You've already heard it more than once, and you'll likely hear it again here today. But if you do not take steps to lock up your firearms and to secure them where they're not readily accessible inside your vehicles, you're setting yourself up to become the victim of a crime and setting up potentially someone else who may become the unfortunate recipient of one of those rounds that's fired from your firearm. Each and every one of these gentlemen standing behind me here today, including myself, all support responsible gun ownership for sporting purposes, for recreation, for hunting, and for personal protection. But with that right comes a responsibility for us to ensure that these firearms are secured so that they don't fall into the wrong hands and fall into the hands of these young guns or these youthful offenders. The fact of the matter is, the problems that we're dealing with today are generations old and have arisen from problems that started back in the 90s with failures with DJJ and DCF, and we're dealing with the fallout from that now. Mr. Larissa spoke about it earlier. This is not necessarily something that's in our wheelhouse to deal with, but we've taken it on as our project to see if we can exert some influence here in the 7th Judicial Circuit, and we hope that the remainder of the state will take notice and adopt similar policies and programs where we're targeting these youthful offenders who commit violent crimes with guns and let them know that we're not going to tolerate it. And I don't want to take away any of Shannon's thunder. He'll talk some more about the NIBIN program, but I'm personally grateful for the partnerships that we have with ATF, with the State Attorney's Office, with FDLE, and with all the surrounding sheriff's offices to bring to fruition a program like this to our part of the state. It's unprecedented, and like I said, I hope that other jurisdictions around the state will take notice, because the bottom line is, if you commit a crime with a gun here in the 7th Judicial Circuit, we now have access to that robust ballistics information network that Shannon's going to talk about in just a few minutes, and we're coming after you. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Sheriff Hardwick at St. Johns County.
Mr. Larissa, thank you. This initiative could not have come at a better time, Mr. Larissa. Sheriff Deloach from Putnam County and Sheriff Staley from Flagler County, during this time when you approached us, we were actually working multiple shootings in all 3 counties that we knew were related from the same juvenile gangs, we'll actually call them. But this is my question. 190 defendants are up on this board. This is a 6-month initiative, operation. Where are the parents at? Where are the parents at? Where are the guardians at? Where's the responsibility and accountability of where your kids are during the dark hours of the night? Because most of these crimes occur in the dark hours of the night. We in St. Johns County, I'm embarrassed to tell you today that we've had over almost 100 firearms stolen. Most of those were stolen from vehicles. So here's the follow-up. I ask for responsibility and accountability of our homeowners, our vehicle owners, our residents of all 4 counties that stand here together saying, please help us out. Because Mr. Larissa actually mentions the word break in, majority of us open the car door handle, and the firearm is somewhere in the car unlocked. Very seldom do we have the old felony lane where someone is coming through the 4 counties, breaks the window looking for firearms. We've made it so much easier, by the way. All we simply do now is leave the firearm in the car with the doors unlocked and go to bed. And now it's in the hands and responsibility of law enforcement. But I talk about those 78 firearms stolen from January to August of this year in St. Johns County alone. How many did not go reported? How many were used in Duval County, Flagler County, Putnam County, Volusia County, other surrounding counties? So I simply ask you this initiative could not have come at a better time, sir. But the relationships that we share are unlike no other across the United States of America, but unlike no other in the Southern Judicial Circuit, Mr. Larrizza. And that's our federal partners, our state partners, and of course my fellow sheriffs. Again, so we ask you to step up, show some responsibility and accountability for not only your belongings, but your kids as well. So again, thank you for this initiative. Thank you for covering us today. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Mike Chip with Volusia County.
Thank you, RJ. I want to thank you for being a no-nonsense bullshit prosecutor. You're a different breed than what we're seeing, and this is what has to be done. I can't say much more than what these folks are saying here behind me other than to say this to you. If you're a little desperado and you think it's cool to get out of a car at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and strafe a house with over 50 rounds with an AK-47, we're coming to get your ass, okay? Parents, we're coming after you. That's what this unity is about. We had an incident in DeLand, several incidents actually over a 10-day period around Thanksgiving. I think it was 7 people shot, 1 dead, and at least 5 other incidents were the reports of gunshots. We formed a task force with DeLand, and we went after it. We made 75 arrests. We seized 13 firearms, including 1 ghost gun, and we've seized pounds and pounds of drugs, whether it's crack cocaine, powder cocaine, fentanyl, you name it, it's out there on the streets. One of the arrests was a convicted teenager at a DeLand football game waving a firearm around, and he was caught on body camera footage. And let me tell you something, with the help of our ATF partners, you want to post that stuff on social media, we're coming to get you. We have zero tolerance in this circuit for the firearms displays that are going on. That kid was at a DeLand football game, and you heard what happened in Jacksonville. We saw what happened in Philadelphia at a football game. We're seeing these teenagers shooting up these sporting events. It's coming to an end, and we are going to charge you to the fullest extent of the law. And I cannot thank the state attorney. It is so refreshing to hear him take these cases and do everything the law allows him to do to send the message clear. So I'll end it again. If you don't want to make his list, and you don't want to see your kid on the news, start taking responsibility. Search their room, see where these firearms are, and we're tracking them with the help of the ATF and the FBI and FDLE. We're tracking these guns down, and we're coming to get you.
I'd like to introduce Shannon Ham with ATF.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Ham. I'm the Supervisory Special Agent of the ATF's Jacksonville Field Office. It's an honor for me to be up here with these gentlemen, from the State Attorney to the FDLE Special Agent in Charge and the sheriffs. We welcome partnership, and we're here to help them in the issues of violent crime. Everyone here recognizes the importance of building community trust, as well as investing in prevention and intervention programs. Every day, the people that these guys lead are on the front lines of trying to prevent violent crime in our communities. For our part, ATF, our mission is investigating violent crime, solving them, as well as disrupting firearms trafficking, which leads to violent crime. We also want to demonstrate how crime gun intelligence can lead investigators with leads in our cases. And that's kind of what we're here for today with the NIBIN, with the test firing and the NIBIN entries. We know that firearms trafficking and violent crime differs wherever you are. Jacksonville looks different than Putnam County. We know this because we have technical expertise and proprietary capabilities at ATF where we regulate the firearms industry. Over 3,000 licensees are in Florida alone. We also use our crime gun intelligence to drive our cases. And that is that we're trying to find, prosecute, and lock up the community's most violent offenders. With NIBIN, as we talked about a little bit outside, it's a tool. It's an investigative tool that ATF and our partners are using across the United States. It's designed to link essentially otherwise unrelated incidents. So you can take a test fire that we don't believe is involved in a shooting and it hits off another shooting, builds an investigative link, that we can further pursue. We're using that across multiple jurisdictions and just to generate those investigative leads. So every gun possesses a unique set of characteristics, much like DNA, fingerprints, and it's imprinted on cartridge cases and bullets when it's fired. And that's what NIBIN is. It's able to compare those. So this ballistic evidence offers investigators broad opportunities. I mean, it's advanced a lot just in my career. Now we can compare those markings to determine whether bullets or casings collected at a crime scene match a particular firearm, as well as we can test fire firearms that the law enforcement sees, creating a unique casing to that weapon that we can enter into the NIBIN system that can link shootings and show us a pattern of violence in our communities. Analysis used to be very time consuming as far as manpower intensive. NIBIN automates that process. So now, once we submit it to NIBIN, we're hoping to have a quick turnaround within 48 hours. We're getting leads generated to the investigators on the street that they can pursue those cases. While this technology is proprietary to ATF, it's been used throughout the United States. As of now, we have around 250 NIBIN sites in the United States that is generating crime gun intelligence to our partners to pursue violent crime cases. We're excited that this digital ballistic evidence technology can be a part of this pilot program here with the gentleman behind me. Basically, and it's going to paint a bigger picture of the crime problems that we have here in this area. Because relationships matter, no one organization can combat violent crime. That's our main mission at ATF, is preventing violent crime and partnering with our agencies that we partner with on a daily basis to stop it before it happens or pursue the ones that commit violent crime. It's remarkable to me that 4 sheriff's offices in this area are all here today together, as well as the FDLE special agent in charge and the state attorney, that we're going to share this NIBIN trailer. We're going to test fire as many crime guns as we can to generate leads from that, match offenders that we previously didn't know, and pursue investigations further. It's impressive to me that a state attorney sees the value of this ballistic program and is actively championing it. And for that, I want to thank you for your leadership. In conclusion, we're always happy to work with our partner agencies. ATF strives to be on the ground with our agencies that we work with. We're happy to help every day, and we can only make a difference working together. Thank you.
And I'd also like to invite Mike Williams, former sheriff of Duval County, and the RAC of the FDLE Jacksonville Division.
Thanks, RJ. So listen, I'm happy to be here today. You know, we've had a lot of experience in Jacksonville during my time as sheriff in dealing with this issue, but we also had a lot of success in partnering with ATF and partnering with a lot of other local agencies, and that partnership's hugely important. So to be staying here today and to get partner again on an issue like that, again, happy to be here, and thank you, RJ, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We're going to continue this process with NIBIN until all of the firearms in the different jurisdictions here have been tested and compared. We look forward to solving some shootings and generating leads because of that. And I can't thank ATF enough, because they're dedicating resources and manpower and coming to the different counties where that tank that you saw, that trailer, can bring the weapons out, have them shot, collect the evidence, collect the casings, send them off, have them evaluated, and see if there's any matches. That's a lot of work, folks, and they are willing to do it. They're dedicating resources to do it because they care about the communities like the rest of us do. Having said all that, if you have any questions, we'd entertain them at this time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of these, what I'm hearing a lot, I'm hearing a lot about guns that are stolen from homes and guns that are stolen from cars. I'm from Jacksonville, Indian Market, and up there, you know, the northwest side, the west side, places like Arlington, the gun of choice is not your typical gun that you would find left in a car or in somebody's home. I'm talking about the AK-47, sometimes fully automatic, and, you know, on the street they're known as choppers. Is anyone, how does this address guns that with that kind of firepower? Because again, these aren't necessarily stolen weapons, these are guns that somehow are filtering onto the streets, either through straw purchases or some other
Right. Well, I can say that I've talked with ATF about that particular incident, and they are aggressively, when you talk about the straw purchases or a straw man buying the guns and then providing them to some of these groups, yeah, that absolutely goes on, and yes, we're absolutely tracking it and doing our best to stop it. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So are you, with an idea, when you're taking these cases and you're taking all these guns that the sheriff's departments have, are you actually looking for evidence from previous crimes? Or are you kind of trying to track each gun and say, this one was done this, it was stolen, could have happened somewhere else?
Well, what happens is, not every gun that gets seized gets tested. We just don't have the resources, the manpower to do that. But what we're doing now is going back several years, taking those guns that were seized but were never fired, and shooting them, taking those casings, and then seeing if those casings show up, there's a match in the system. So that would, if there is, then that gives you the opportunity to communicate with that jurisdiction, find out who was involved in that shooting, what leads do they have, what leads do you have, and you can potentially generate and solve a case because of that. Plus, those casings will stay in that system, and they'll be there for review at a later date as well. So that's the overall. Did I explain that properly, yes, Shannon? Okay. Yes, sir.
We're talking about all the guns that you guys are fixing to test with this Operation Young Guns program. Are you guys focusing on weapons that are particularly maybe used in crimes or suspected to have used in specific crimes that you're looking at? What may they be?
Well, that could be a crime. It could be seized guns that were on a DUI stop, and they seize a gun as a result of the DUI stop. Or it could be a possession of firearm by convicted felon where the gun is seized. It hasn't been tested. The criteria is, has the gun been tested or not? Sometimes they were seized because of a crime. Sometimes they were seized for other reasons. It really doesn't matter at this point because they are in law enforcement custody, and we can test them, and then we can take those casings and put them in the system so they can be compared.
Second part of my question is, how many firearms are you guys hoping to test by the time Operation Young Guns is over?
Well, that's a good question. Do we know how many we tested in Putnam County? Does anybody know?
There was over close to 300 guns that we tested, and I think, if I may, RJ, this is an ongoing operation, so to put a cap on the amount of guns that we're going to test, I think is probably not an accurate assessment of what we're looking to do here. But if there's a gun that's been involved in a crime where the law enforcement seizes, our hope is to take all of those guns and test them so that we can enter that unique ballistic evidence into the NIBIN system and then use it to compare to crimes that have occurred either in our jurisdiction or in other places, and make those links so that we can generate investigative leads.
Can I use an analogy real quick? Does everybody remember when Pam Bondi got monies for us to test every single rape kit that was out there? Remember when she did that? Because even if they didn't have a suspect or somebody went to prosecute, those rape kits were sitting on a shelf somewhere. The trick was to get those rape kits into the system and see what would come up for future attacks. This is what we're doing here with this initiative. This initiative is exactly the same. Get all your backlog guns, test fire them, get those casings in the system, and see what the connectivity is. We seized 3 AK-47s. Now, I'm not a ballistic expert, but we're pretty damn sure that one of those AK-47s was used in multiple shootings in Volusia. If they were used in multiple shootings in Volusia, they're going to be used everywhere else because it's a community gun. And the reason I say that is the ammunition was a certain kind of ammunition that you really don't see. I think there were black or gray casings. They weren't your normal brass casings, but we've seen those in other shootings. So the objective is, okay, we have the gun, we have some suspects, what's going on with these other incidents? I know they just connected a gun that we recovered off of somebody to a homicide in Seminole County. That just happened last week. So that's what the issue. So think DNA, that's DNA of the gun. Those shell casings are that gun's DNA.
What's the turnaround to getting the results you want in terms of like for each gun? What is the turnaround?
I'll tell you, for us, we don't have a backlog. We've tested everything. The backlog is FDLE. And it's not for anything Mike can do. You just can't hire people to do that scientific work for us. I don't know as far as the ATF is.
And Shannon, why don't you address, because I think you've got a quick turnaround you're pursuing with what you're doing now.
So what we're doing with this initiative is, because FDLE is obviously, they got tons and tons of cases generating daily. So what we're doing with these test fires, we're sending those to our ATF lab. We have regional labs, the closest one being in Atlanta. So we're entering them in the Nobbin in our Atlanta lab, and that sends the results back here. Usually the turnaround times, we're hopeful it's like 48 hours for those. So this is kind of going back to this. I mean, this is more of a historical Nobbin, but the GOLA Nobbin and what Jacksonville, which Special Agent Charles Williams led when he was the sheriff there, was those are getting generated 48, 72 hours. You're getting leads to detectives on guns that we're recovering each day, not waiting 2 weeks, a month, and so forth.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How are you on getting the convictions and long-term justice for the juveniles? Because over the years, I've always heard sheriffs and police agencies having to arrest the same kid. He gets arrested, he's out back on the street the next month, over and over, the same guy over and over.
Right, right. Look, like I said earlier, you put a gun in your hand and you use it, you're going to be charged as an adult. And you're going to face adult sanctions typically once you're convicted or you enter a plea. I wish it were not true. I wish we didn't have to do that, but there's not the accountability in the juvenile justice system. Look, you got a kid shoots somebody or shoots at somebody, and they go to the juvenile system, the maximum time they're typically locked up is 3 years on what they call a maximum risk. Now, they'll say they could be locked up until they're 21, but I don't think any of us have ever seen that happen. It doesn't happen. They can't do it. They don't have the facilities, and the facilities they have, if you follow the news, they're having problems with them. So the juvenile system is not equipped to hold these kids accountable. And the reality, the grim, but the reality is that they will be charged as adults, and they will face adult sanctions. And I think Sheriff Staley likes it.
So just this last legislative session, the Florida sheriffs worked with the state attorney's group to change a part of the juvenile justice law. Prior to this change, the maximum time a judge could hold a juvenile in a secure facility was 21 days. Now they can go on a lot longer than that. They get reviews at every 21 days, but that was the maximum. So if the kid had been there 20 days, got out, did something else, come back in, one more day. I mean, it was ridiculous. So there are things that need to be changed. DJJ needs to be funded better, but there needs to be real sanctions, because I saw this in the 1990s when I was the undersheriff in Orange County. DJJ was absolutely broken, and we worked with the legislature then. There was a joke in our agency, Orange County Sheriff's Office back then: steal 10 cars, get a canoe ride down the Wekiva River. That's the kind of pansy sentences that were occurring for youthful offenders, and unfortunately we're seeing it today. And what they think they're doing is helping kids, is doing just the opposite. Because now when they commit a crime with a gun, because you didn't deal with them for the 10 cars that they stole, the auto burglaries, the drugs, and so forth. Now, 14, 15, 16 years old, they're going to face an adult sentence. So it's broken, and you can't turn these kids around unless you deal with them in the beginning, because they're not being dealt with at home, I promise you that.
Other questions? Any others? Yes, sir.
I'm interested in these numbers about this rise in youth violence being kind of region-wide, maybe even bigger than region-wide. In what ways does it seem that violence in these different counties is actually connected?
Oh, well, Seminole County, we found there was a gun stolen in Seminole County, was used, I think, in our one of our Volusia County cases. I think that Sheriff Chitwood just said that they matched some casings or firearms to a homicide in Seminole County from Volusia. I know that the Lake City had some, Columbia County, I think, that ATF did a similar thing there, and they matched with some weapons or some casings in Duval County. I mean, the bottom line is they are connected. I mean, these guns migrate. They get passed along. They get shared, and they get used, and then more guns come into play. And so it's a racket, and social media plays a big part in that too. That's one of the ways that these guns are traded and used. That's very disturbing. Yes, sir.
I was just thinking at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned the alarm on a high number of shootings. And you also mentioned that kids were being dropped into neighborhoods to try out cars to find guns.
Right.
So are we looking at organized gangs being headed by people who have these things or these plans going on?
We're looking at organized groups, I believe, yes, absolutely. Organized groups. They may not be what you'd consider your traditional gangs, because nowadays, folks, their gangs are localized. It used to be Crips and the Bloods, and it was like national, international. Now what you see is local gangs or local groups getting together, and virtual gangs, I would say, de facto gangs, but not on the scale of maybe going outside of their particular area, their community. But then you got the concerns. Because, look, we've had rap songs being done by some of these groups about murders and shootings that they've committed or are going to commit. And it's all shared on social media. So really what you see is a group of groups at odds with each other, willing to shoot and kill each other over being disrespected or being in a fight and solving it with a gun instead of another way. And we're seeing it all the time. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
This weekend, a 13-year-old was killed in a drive-by shooting in Jacksonville. There were other people in the vehicle that was just, just riddled with bullets.
Right.
I'm just curious if, through this program, are you guys, not just down here, but maybe reaching out to Duval County just to see maybe what they got, if some of the shells they found at that scene maybe match some of the things that in your jurisdiction, your jurisdiction.
Absolutely. That's why we're doing this, so that you could, the casings that we get are entered in, and the casings that they get in Duval County. In fact, I'm sure ATF is already working on that. They will all be put in this system that, when accessed by law enforcement, it is a nationwide system, and I think it's broken down regionally as well. But that's the goal, is to get them in there so that we can make those connections. Because those homicides, if there's a connection, then that means we might be able to solve it. So, absolutely. Anything else?
I have a question for
Yes.
the ATF.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to share any insight into the ATF's investigation into fires at two facilities where fireworks were being stored last week? There was one in Brevard and one in Orange.
Not to my knowledge. We'd have to pass that to our public affairs. That's not in my area, so I can
Are you
answer
able to
that.
speak in general terms at all about
As
the
far as
ATF's
arson?
role in that kind of investigation?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, I think during my speaking, was essentially ATF has federal jurisdiction over arson. So we have certified fire investigators, is what we call them, CFIs. So those agents go through a 2 to 3 year long program to become certified fire investigators that specialize in arson. And we also have a national response team and an international response team. And on those it's a huge, for us, it has to be a pretty large scale fire for those to be activated. But on those, you have fire engineers, you have CFIs, you have special agents that specialize in interviewing, photography. So those assets would come, I don't know if they did on that, I can't speak to that. But if it was some large scale, then we would call in those resources, and that's one of our national. But each field office has certified fire investigators that specialize in arson investigations within ATF.
Anything else, folks? Okay, thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate your coverage. God bless you, and Merry Christmas. Thank you. Good job, all.